Hey guys, I want to welcome you to the weekly Wednesday for the Financial Freedom newsletter, where every week, every Wednesday, we delve into something inspirational, motivational, something excerpt taken from the Financial Freedom weekly newsletter. Wherever you are, if you're listening on Spotify, on iTunes, Google, be sure to click the like, subscribe, share, comment. And without ado, let's get into the show. Welcome everybody to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, we talk about 4 different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health freedom. And in that light, I'm always curious, interviewing entrepreneurs, people that are into brand, digital marketing, entrepreneurship. And so today we have Michael Doyle, and he's the CEO of Brand Iron and Brand Champion. So we're going to talk today all about pitch decks, raising capital, creating brands, marketing. So I'll let Michael tell us about his background and introduce him to the show. So Michael, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I know it's holidays, and it's great to be able to connect. And tell us about Brand Iron and Brand Champion, your journey and what you do.
Sure. So let me take a step back and tell me a little bit about the journey. I had a previous advertising and marketing agency, and I sold out during a IPO roll-up during the dot-com days, and reported to Wall Street for a couple of years. And it was an absolutely awful experience. I mean, I thought I was going to be done and retired in my early 30s. Did not work out the way that I thought it was going to be. But the good thing about it is that I learned a lot about branding positioning from a totally different perspective. And that's really branding positioning for results and hitting specific desired outcomes, or in this regard, since we were pseudo public company, what we were, but it was just kind of crazy times. And it's all about what at that time was like quarterly results. And did you hit your revenue numbers? Did you hit your EBITDA numbers? Did you hit your desired goals and objectives? And it was a ton of pressure. And during the times when, .com, when that bubble burst, it was brutal. I mean, it was just brutal, but it was a horrible time, but also I wouldn't be where I'm at today without having gone through that time and learning what I learned. And so when I was done with my indentured servanthood there, I went out and started Brand Iron, and I've been doing Brand Iron 20 years now. And it's really about branding, positioning companies for results. And with my background in reporting to Wall Street, and at that time, we did about what we call analyst presentations to support. We did a quarterly pitch deck to kind of support our stock to the investment banking firms on Wall Street. And I did not know it at the time that there's a lot of practical applications for this. And so when I got out, I started working and pitching this idea of doing not only analyst presentations, but capital raise decks and what we call management presentations to sell your company. And so over the years, we've probably done more than 250 pitch decks, capital raise decks, management presentations, all sorts of things over the years. And we work in the private equity space, venture capital space, real estate investment, technology. And we also have a super cool concept in healthcare. I can't talk about it on air, but super cool idea though.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about my background.
Yeah. It's interesting. We'll talk about some of the common, audience listening out there. One is, what are the elements of every successful pitch deck?
Sure. I call it, there's several different things, but the first one is having a really nice, tight brand story. It's not just about the brand, but telling the story about who you are, what you're all about, what are the differentiators that separate you from other competitors in the space, telling a really good story of why and how you're better, but then also telling a really, really good financial story. Understand there's the company, the brand, what that is, and how and why that's really attractive to the marketplace. But then you got to be able to package and tell the financial story, which is how do you put that together? Why is this investment? Because you're trying to raise capital typically or get acquired. And so why is this attractive? What's your rate of returns? What's your IRR? Are you tracking along your EBITDA numbers and hitting those goals and objectives? Are you creating what we call enterprise value along the way to be and to really grow and become a profitable cash producing machine? And be able to put that into a nice tight presentation that's 20, 25 slides is really the challenge. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we get decks that are 50 to 100 slides. And they tell me the story's in there. And it probably is, but you're going to bore any investor, any acquirer to death if you try to pitch them a 20, 50 to 100 page presentation. So the key is really spelling out, what is that value prop? What's unique about you? Why is this going to separate yourself and be different than anything else already in the marketplace? And then what is the financial story that makes this thing attractive? Is it a reoccurring revenue model? Is it a SaaS model with that reoccurring revenue model? Is it a ongoing retained relationship? Do you have a customer base that's so big that you just open up the door and they rush into your practice, so they rush into your business? What is it that makes you and your business super exciting and super desirable? And we have to know what that jewel is. And that's typically the hardest part.
Yeah. And when you're talking about, it's kind of like when you're pitching, you're kind of getting this product market, product customer fit. And you're talking about brands. So what are key elements to a memorable brand?
Keep it simple. People overcomplicate it all the time. Have a simple, have a look that's consistent across the board on your website, in your deck, in your social media, in your marketing, in your advertising. Also, if you can distill down what it is you do succinctly into a nice tagline or positioning statement, is huge as well. And the other key thing is if you have what we call like a 30-second, 15-second elevator pitch. So when people ask you, what is it you do and how and why you're better and why do I need to have this, is really what we need to try to get accomplished in a brand. And we put together those value points. There's typically differentiators that go into value points that go into value proposition and kind of what's all about the brand, but then also is what does your model look like and how and why is your brand and your model one and the same. And the other thing I tell people is a brand isn't just about a fancy logo or a fancy website. A brand is how do you position your company for helping you achieve your desired outcomes, whether it be revenue goals, whether it be, like you said, the 4 different elements of your life and how do you brand yourself to hit those 4 different elements is really, a brand should be branding positioning to help you achieve those specific desired outcomes.
Yeah. And, talking about, brand, because, like some of the most valuable brands, Apple, Coke, Google, all these very powerful brands. How do you pitch investors with success? What does it take? Is it confidence? Is it, what is some of the elements?
Well, it's kind of like what we talked about before, but it's knowing your brand, knowing those 3, 4, 5 value points that make you different and unique and better than anything else in the marketplace, having that succinct story down of what your brand is, what it stands for, having that brand look and feel and tone throughout the entire brand and all the different assets that you've got, communicate and convey those same exact value points and value proposition. And you do have to be confident, but you really got to know what your brand is, why, and how it's better. But then also, like in a deck or even your business model, you got to know what that model looks like and how that brand and communication of those different value points and your different marketing mechanisms are going to help you achieve those desired goals and objectives. And keeping it succinct is the hardest challenge. Being simple and straightforward is the hardest challenge.
Yeah.
If you can say in one sentence, we do A, B, and C, and this is why and how we're better, it's awesome. But we hear all the time people talk I tell them, give me your 30-second elevator pitch, and 5 minutes later, I'm still scratching my head trying to figure out what the hell they do. And so if you can distill it down into those simple sentences and value points, and they should be like bullet points that you can rattle off clearly and concisely, and then rattle off what your model looks like and how it makes sense. That's what's a really powerful brand. And, you know, when you talked about the Nikes of the world, I mean, it's just do it. And I mean, it's that simple, right? And it's very memorable, but most businesses overcomplicate it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like kind of like just keep it succinct and, you know, what is your unique proposition? What is your differentiator? You know, be the talking to one person, you know, be the class of one where you don't have any competition. You're competing against yourself.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. How about protecting your brand? Tell us, like a lot of people are interested in, you know, not only creation, but protecting it.
Yeah. So we talk about that all the time, especially because when we work with these private equity or venture capital firms, IP or intellectual property can and could and should be one of your most valuable assets. So making sure you have the trademarks for your logo, make sure you have trademarks on your taglines. You know, it's kind of crazy these days, but one of the hardest elements to have for your brand is having a really nice, you know, succinct URL that's simple. You know, .coms is still pretty desirable, but we see all kinds of .ios and .nets, and which is fine. But having a URL that you can protect and own. The other things that we really want to see as far as protecting your IP is making sure that if you have a process or a customer experience, that you package those and protect those and either trademark those or copyright those as well are hugely important. Another hugely valuable asset of a company is their database. I mean, I picked up a new customer just a couple of weeks ago that they've been in business for 6 years, and that only for the last 6 months or so they've been tracking who their customers are and who's doing business with them. And you know, it's just crazy to think about that. But if you have a really good database in a CRM system or a marketing automation platform, that's one of the most valuable assets you have for your company as well too. And so you've got to make sure you not only have that, but you're updating that and you're protecting that, and that's like sacred to, you know, one of your most valuable assets as well too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about your reputation and, you know, who you partner with, you know, who your co-founders are. Talk about some.
Hey, that brings up a great point, Christopher. We've been working with quite a few, you know, medical practices lately, and it's unbelievable, you know, and restaurants too, where they have the problem where people go in there and they just love to gripe. And so, you know, one of the other valuable assets that you've got to protect is your brand and your name and your reputation. And so you've got to figure out a system to, you know, tackle those negative reviews and put positive reviews up there. And, you know, your brand and your reputation is invaluable. And you've got to have, whether it be a way to get more positive Google reviews or Yelp reviews and push down the negative ones is a hugely important factor as far as your brand and reputation is concerned. I don't care what kind of business you're in. It's hugely important as well too.
Yeah. Talk about marketing strategies to grow your revenue.
Sure. There's lots of different ones. You know, number one, I talk about it, but having a good database is first and foremost in my mind. Okay, you got to know who your customers are, who your desired prospects are, and then you got to figure out and put them in a persona or a profile of what they want to look like and what their interests are, and then you can figure out the most effective mediums to reach them. You know, I believe in a more what we call integrated approach, where it's not just one medium, but you're going to use your database to hit them through like email marketing. Or, I mean, I didn't used to be a huge proponent in text either, but for these consumer companies or like these medical practices or anybody who deals with consumers, texting is becoming a huge thing these days. And it's amazing how effective it can be, and very, very cost effective as well. Yeah. Figure out how you can connect with your audience on social media is important as well too. figuring out how you're going to tackle this digitally as well too is hugely important, whether it be through Google ads or Google phrases or um, what we call programmatic advertising, where you put all these together to aim at a specific target audience, is hugely important as well too. And then, the good old fashioned networking is hugely important as well too. If you've got a localized business, there's nothing more important than building a personal relationship with people in your community. And I think, especially what we've gone through with COVID, I mean, that's people, it's just been, people haven't done that. And so people have a desire to get back out there and do that again. And it's hugely important.
Yeah. And,
and so is there a single plan that works? No, but the key is figuring out the secret sauce that works for your business, that's most attractive, that's most effective, that's kind of least dollars available, that's going to do the job for you, is going to be the one that's going to do what's best for you.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, marketing strategies, and then growing and scaling your company. It's like your early stage, and then you raise your venture capital and all of that. What are your thoughts on, because you've been through it, on growing, scaling your company and positioning your company to get acquired?
Yeah. Well, that's a loaded question, Christopher. There's a lot of different components in there, right?
Yeah.
But really, it's very similar to what like a private equity or venture capital firm would do. Is they have a checklist as all the different components, whether it be a management team, what does that look like? Do you have your technology, your database, and all that up to stuff? How does your team look, and what does that all want to look like? How's your brand? How does that look? How is your staff and your customer experience? Do you have that well mapped out? And do you have a way to deliver on that on a consistent basis? Do you have a really tight, brand in the marketplace, your website, all the marketing materials, as well as your social media in the marketplace too? Is that really tied together nicely and communicated effectively and really positions you appropriately? And kind of going through and do an analysis, just like these other PE firms that may potentially buy you, is doing that yourself. And there's lots of different things you could do online, and do a little search on, like a private equity venture capital checklist of things they look at, and doing that yourself. And, the key for this is not doing it a couple months before you want to take a look at get acquired, right? You got to do it a year in advance. So you've got time to be able to address all these things, put these systems or processes in place, and to be able to affect real change, and be able to be ready to be able to get acquired, and to be able to be ready to be able to put your best foot forward on creating maximum value for if you were to get acquired.
Yeah.
And the next thing is, putting together, once you have all those together, I like to put that together, a pitch presentation, and how can you do that? And kind of talk about your brand, your unique value proposition, your story, and why you're super attractive, and how you're going to be a valuable addition to their portfolio or to this particular company, and why this makes sense for them. And then here's your financial track record and why you are highly desirable. And be able to tell that within 20, 25 slides is the trick.
Yeah. Really fantastic discussion. A lot of gems. How do people reach out to you, contact you, follow you on social media, and look into you?
Sure. It's my company's brandiron.net or brandiron.net. Check us out on our website. We're on all the different social media platforms. I actually have, we also have a website called capraisedeck.com as well too, which we do a lot of exactly what we're talking about, cap raise decks, pitch presentations, and management presentations. So you can look me up as well there, or connect with me on LinkedIn under Michael Doyle.
Yeah. And for all the listeners out there, Mike's resources will be in the links and show notes. Be sure to check him out on Twitter, LinkedIn, his website as well. And with that, thanks for coming onto the podcast. It's been a great conversation.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I hope you really enjoyed that wonderful, inspirational, motivational piece. Again, wherever you are listening, if you liked it, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. We're on everywhere: Spotify, iTunes, Google, Amazon, Audible. And without much ado, be sure to thank this show's sponsors, and we'll see you next week.